You know, when you picture the classic dynamic of a bully and their target, there is a very specific image that uh, immediately jumps to mind.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost cinematic, really.
Right. It's like there's this imposing figure, puffing out their chest, taking up all the space in the room.
And then there's the person shrinking away, looking down, essentially just taking the hit.
Exactly. And society has trained us, I mean, right from the time we are in grade school, to look at that shrinking person and assign them a very specific label.
Yeah.
We look at them and we think, well, they're just weak.
Right, we assume they lack fortitude.
Yeah, that they are somehow deficient in whatever invisible armor the rest of us are supposedly wearing.
Hmm.
So we tell them to toughen up. We tell them, grow a thicker skin.
Which is the classic advice.
Right. But what if we have had that entirely backwards this whole time? What if the person being targeted is not weak at all? What if they are actually highly perceptive, deeply sensitive, and experiencing the world from multiple, incredibly complex angles that the aggressor cannot even begin to comprehend?
That is the exact question we are tackling today.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are so glad you are here with us today because we are about to challenge some deeply ingrained assumptions about human behavior.
We really are, and it is so crucial that we re-examine this. We are going to be unpacking a fascinating psychological text today, one that dismantles the exact mental mechanics of bullying, of victimhood, and, most importantly, of recovery.
It's some heavy stuff, but it's incredibly eye-opening.
Oh, it really is. We are going to deconstruct something called the mental axis, which functions as the core of our self-will. We will explore the surprising emotional evolution of a person who is constantly targeted, and we are going to peer directly into the deeply insecure, fundamentally terrified mind of the aggressor.
And to be clear with you listening, we are not just talking about schoolyard dynamics here, like kids fighting over a swing set. The stakes here apply to every single facet of adult life.
Absolutely.
We are talking about the toxic boss who micromanages you to tears,
Mm.
Or the manipulative family member who ruins every holiday. Or even the passive-aggressive friend who always leaves you feeling totally drained.
Because what we are really talking about is how human beings interact under intense psychological pressure. We are looking at how we process fear, how we construct our sense of self in relation to others, and this is the amazing part, how the remarkably simple act of truly listening can entirely dismantle those toxic power dynamics.
Just by listening.
Just by listening, without judgment, without trying to fix anything. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is about the fundamental architecture of human relationships. It is about understanding how easily those relationships become distorted, but more importantly, how they can be fundamentally healed from the inside out.
Okay, let's unpack this from the very beginning. Because to understand how to actually stop this cycle of emotional abuse, the research we are looking at makes it clear that we first have to completely reframe how we view the target.
Right, we have to look at their internal state.
Exactly. The internal state of a person who lacks what this framework calls a solid mental axis. And this is where that myth of weakness completely falls apart, doesn't it?
It shatters it entirely. The text points out that people whose hearts are easily swayed, the people who frequently find themselves targeted by toxic individuals, do so not because they are inherently weak, but because their thinking is incredibly delicate and expansive.
Delicate and expansive. That's such a different way to frame it.
Yeah, they feel the world from various angles simultaneously. And because of this massive influx of perceptive data, they develop an unstable self-will where they simply cannot settle on one single thought or reaction.
So they're just taking in too much all at once.
Precisely. That state is referred to as trial and error thinking, and it is a fascinating yet exhausting place to be. Imagine your brain is constantly running complex social simulations, but it never arrives at a definitive conclusion.
That sounds paralyzing, honestly.
It is. The targeted person gets trapped in an endless loop of unanswerable, agonizing questions. Let's say a colleague sighs heavily during a meeting, or a friend takes 12 hours to text back.
Oh, the heavy sigh. We've all panicked over a heavy sigh.
Right. Now, a person with a firm mental axis might briefly notice it and move on. They think, well, Bob's having a bad day, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, it just bounces off them.
But for a highly sensitive person, the mind immediately starts spinning. Why did they sigh? Was it something I said in the previous slide? Did I offend them?
Is there something fundamentally wrong with me?
Yes. Or they wonder, is the other person just having a bad day? Or are they actually trying to signal to the room that I am incompetent? They run through every possible scenario.
It sounds like an overwhelming state of cognitive overload. Just a recipe for complete burnout.
It is deeply distressing for the person experiencing it. Because these individuals possess such high empathy and such acute sensitivity, they are taking in a massive amount of environmental and social data.
They're noticing everything.
Everything. The microexpressions, the shifts in tone, the subtle body language. But they lack that firm axis or a heavy anchor to ground them in their own reality.
So they just float around in all that data.
Exactly. So instead of being able to process that data and say, wow, that person was rude, but that's their problem, they are violently shaken by the words and attitudes of others. Every external input causes a massive internal fluctuation.
You know, here is an analogy that came to mind when I was reviewing the material. It is like having an incredibly high-tech, wildly expensive radio antenna.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, this thing is so powerful that it picks up every single frequency out there. Like every AM station, every FM station, police scanners, satellite signals, just everything, all at the exact same time.
That's a perfect way to visualize it.
It is undeniably a powerful tool, right? It is a sign of incredible capacity and awareness.
Yeah.
But without a dial to tune into just one specific station, which is what this mental axis is, all you hear is deafening, chaotic static.
And you can't decipher any of it.
Right. It is overwhelming. And in that static, you misinterpret everything. You think a cold shoulder means you are universally hated. You think being ignored for a moment means you are inherently flawed. It is not a deficit of character. It is just a massive sensory and emotional overload.
That analogy perfectly illustrates how internal overload physically manifests, and more importantly, how it is perceived by others in the environment.
Because others can see that static, right?
They absolutely can. That high-tech antenna picking up static creates a visible physical and energetic signature. And the aggressors, the people who lean into bullying behaviors, act very much like predators in the wild.
Oh, wow. Predators.
Yeah, they are subconsciously scanning their environment, constantly reading the room for this externalized instability. They do not look at this sensitive person and rationally think, oh, they are processing multiple viewpoints and have high empathy.
No, they just see a target.
They just see a highly reactive target. They see someone who lacks an anchor, someone who will easily and reliably supply them with the exact emotional reaction they are desperately craving to regulate their own nervous system.
That is a chilling thought. The very thing that makes someone a deeply empathetic, thoughtful human being is the exact beacon that draws in a toxic person.
It's the tragic irony of the situation.
But when you look at the mechanics of it, it tracks. The bully pokes, and because the target is processing every possible angle of that poke, wondering if they deserved it, wondering what it means, they react strongly. They wobble. They show visible distress. And the bully gets their payoff.
Exactly. The instability leaks out into their behavior. It shows in the hesitations, the desperate attempts to placate the bully, the over-apologizing, the visible confusion. This is entirely about the absence of a grounded self-will.
Because without that will, you're lost.
When your will is unstable, you cannot stand firm in your own reality. You are constantly borrowing the reality of the people around you to try and figure out where you stand.
Wow. Borrowing reality.
Yes. And if the person whose reality you are borrowing happens to be a bully, you're going to find yourself in a very dark, very twisted version of the world where you are always at fault.
Man. So we have this vivid picture of the target. They are overloaded.
Yeah.
Their axis is wobbling because they're trying to process the emotional frequencies of everyone around them, including the person actively attacking them.
Right.
Now that we understand the target is suffering from this overloaded, wobbling axis, we have to look at how we stabilize them. And the natural instinct for anyone who cares about this person is to jump in and fix the situation.
Which is exactly what we naturally want to do.
Of course. But the research drops a massive bombshell here regarding why that instinct completely fails.
It really flips our standard operating procedure entirely on its head. When we see someone struggling, especially someone we love or care about, our immediate, deeply ingrained human response is to offer a solution.
We want to be the hero.
We want to be the hero, or at the very least, we want to alleviate their pain as quickly as possible. So we offer advice, we tell them what to do, we try to solve the puzzle for them.
Right, we give them an action plan.
But the framework is explicit here. To build a mental axis, the person does not need scolding, they do not need advice, and they absolutely do not need you to hand them the correct answers.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit because this is tough to swallow in a practical sense.
I know it goes against everything we're taught.
It really does.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I have a friend who is coming to me crying because they are being actively mistreated by a terrible boss, my immediate reaction is to give them a battle plan.
Natural.
I want to tell them exactly what to document for HR, or I want to explain to them in detail why the boss is a narcissist so my friend stops blaming themselves. Are we saying that by giving them that advice, by handing them that tactical battle plan, I'm actually doing damage?
Yes. And we have to look closely at the psychology of invalidation to understand the mechanics of why that happens.
Okay, tell me why, because I'm struggling with this.
When you offer a battle plan to someone whose mental axis is already wobbling, you are inadvertently sending them a message that undermines their reality. When they express their deep pain and you immediately reply with, well, but you should do this, or because they are just a jerk, or when you try to instantly fix the problem, you are bypassing their emotional state.
I'm skipping over the feeling to get to the solution.
Exactly. For a highly sensitive person who is already trapped in that trial and error thinking, this creates a whole new level of doubt.
How does that create doubt, though? Because my intention is purely to support them and show them they aren't crazy.
Your intention is entirely protective, but the impact is isolating. By telling them what they should do, you are subtly communicating that what they are currently doing and what they are currently feeling is incorrect or insufficient.
Oh, no.
Remember, their primary issue is that they are borrowing reality from others. So they take your advice, compare it to their current state of paralysis or fear, and they begin to doubt their own senses all over again. That makes so much sense.
They think, my friend is right. I should be fighting back. Why aren't I? I must be incredibly weak. There must be something even more wrong with me than I thought.
So they retreat further into their own heads.
Exactly. You have essentially just added another loud frequency to their radio static.
Wow. So by telling them how to fix it, I am basically reinforcing their internal narrative that their current state of being overwhelmed is wrong.
Yes, you're accidentally validating the bully's premise that the victim is defective.
That is wild. So what is the alternative? If we are taking advice and problem solving completely off the table, what do we actually do?
The alternative is providing the profound experience of simply being accepted. The psychological tool highlighted here is astonishingly simple in its phrasing. The phrase is just, you feel that way, huh?
You feel that way, huh?
Yep. That's
I mean, it feels incredibly passive. It almost feels like you are doing absolutely nothing to help the situation. It feels like nothing to the person saying it because it requires no problem solving, no mental gymnastics. But to the person hearing it, it is an absolute lifeline.
How so?
When a sensitive, overwhelmed person is met with zero judgment, just pure, unadulterated acceptance of their current emotional state, their chaotic emotions finally find a safe place to land.
A safe haven.
Exactly. Imagine you are standing in the middle of a hurricane and someone keeps running up to you, handing you blueprints for how to build a storm shelter.
Right, like I can't read these right now.
Exactly. You cannot read the blueprints. The wind is blowing too hard and the rain is in your eyes. You don't need blueprints in that moment. You need someone to just open a door, pull you inside, and let you stand in the quiet for a minute.
The conversational safe haven. That's a beautiful way to put it.
Simply being heard gives a name and a physical space to chaotic feelings. When you say, you feel that way, huh? Or I hear how much that hurt you, you are validating their reality. You're saying, I see your pain, I acknowledge it, and I am not asking you to change it right now.
You just let them exist.
Yes. The listener doesn't have to solve the HR problem or confront the bully. The sheer act of being received without friction allows the victim to stop spinning. The external world finally stops demanding things from them.
The static stops.
The static stops. And in that quiet space, without the pressure to perform or fix, they can slowly begin to return to their own center. They can begin to forge that mental axis.
It is almost like we are acting as a temporary external axis for them, just by holding space. We become the dial that tunes out the static just for a moment so they can finally hear their own internal voice.
That is exactly what happens.
And once they can hear that voice, things start to shift dramatically, don't they? Once the targeted person experiences this profound acceptance, once they have that safe haven, they don't just stay in that state of sadness forever.
Yeah.
A transformation happens in their mind. The emotion
Thanks.
evolves.
It does. And it raises a really important question about how we view the healing process in general. We usually think of healing as a simple transition from feeling bad to feeling better.
Right, like flipping a switch.
But the psychological progression is much more granular than that. It charts a specific, almost chemical path. It starts with the initial phase of crying, confusion, and sadness. That is the raw, unedited reaction to being hurt and overwhelmed.
The hurricane phase.
The hurricane. But as that sadness is repeatedly accepted and validated by someone saying, you feel that way, huh? As it is given that safe place to land, it begins to solidify. It forms a psychological boundary. And that sadness naturally evolves into the next stage, which is anger.
Anger. And you can see that internal monologue shift, right? It goes from, what did I do wrong? How can I fix myself so they stop being mean to me? To, wait a minute, why do I have to go through this? This is wrong.
Yes, and we have to pause here because society has a very complicated relationship with anger.
Oh, incredibly complicated.
We often view anger as a negative, destructive, or toxic emotion that needs to be suppressed or managed immediately. Good vibes only, right?
Right, exactly. Take a deep breath, let it go.
But in this specific context, anger is incredibly healthy. It is the biological force of self-preservation waking up from a dormant state. It is the ego finally drawing a line in the sand and saying, I have inherent value and I do not deserve to be treated this way.
It's the axis forming.
It is the very birth of the mental axis we have been talking about. It is the anger finally dropping and catching on the seafloor.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because nearly every corporate wellness seminar or, self-help book tells us to suppress anger, to take the high road, to be the bigger person. But this framework suggests that if you skip the anger phase, you never actually build the boundary, you just stay vulnerable.
That's entirely correct. If you bypass the anger, you are faking the healing. You are performing wellness without actually achieving it. You have to feel the indignation. You have to feel the injustice of the situation.
So you can't just jump to being okay.
No. Now, this doesn't mean acting out violently or aggressively toward the other person. We aren't saying that. It means internally recognizing and honoring that anger as a legitimate protective response.
Validating your own defense mechanism.
Because once that anger is fully nurtured and validated within the safety of that mental axis, it undergoes one final incredible transformation. It evolves from anger into a feeling of absurdity or ridiculousness.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because reaching a state of absurdity completely shifts the power dynamic in an unexpected way. The best way I can visualize this is thinking about watching a terrifying high-stakes horror movie.
Okay, paint the picture for us.
So you are gripping the armrests, your heart is pounding, you are sweating, you are absolutely terrified of the monster on the screen. It's so real in that moment. But then the camera angle shifts just slightly, the lighting changes, and suddenly you notice the cheap zipper right down the back of the monster's costume.
Oh, that's brilliant. The illusion of the threat completely shatters.
Right. You see that it is just a guy in a rubber suit sweating under the studio lights. It is not scary anymore. In fact, it is just a little pathetic. You realize you have been burning all this adrenaline, absolutely terrified of a prop.
A prop that had no real power over you.
Exactly. And that is what reaching the plateau of absurdity feels like. You reach a state of calm logic. You look at the bully, the person who used to cause you so much agonizing fear and self-doubt, and you just think, what on earth are they doing? Why is a grown adult acting like a toddler, throwing a tantrum in a grocery store?
And this is where we have to highlight a crucial distinction from the text. Not dealing with the bully or simply ignoring them is not a tactical move you can deploy.
What do you mean?
It is not a strategy you can just decide to employ one Tuesday while you are still secretly terrified inside. You cannot force yourself to see the zipper on the monster suit if you are still genuinely convinced the monster is real.
So you can't just pretend to ignore them. Like that whole gray rocking technique doesn't work if your heart rate is still 130 beats per minute?
Exactly, because if you are pretending, you are still vibrating with fear, you are still projecting that energetic instability, and the predator will still sense it. They know you're faking it.
So how do you actually get there?
True detachment, true ignoring is the natural, effortless byproduct of reaching this stage of emotional maturity. You naturally distance yourself because the bully's behavior suddenly looks incredibly childish and fundamentally irrational to you.
You just don't care anymore.
You are no longer engaging with them on their terms because you have ascended to a different emotional vantage point. You aren't playing the game anymore because you realize the game itself is ridiculous.
You outgrow the dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And because the target has naturally distanced themselves because they have stopped reacting out of fear and started looking at the bully like they are just a ridiculous guy in a rubber suit, the entire mechanism of the relationship is broken.
The gears just stop turning.
Which forces us to look at the other side of the equation. We have to look at what happens to the person causing the distress when their supply of fear is suddenly and entirely cut off. If the victim stops playing the game, what happens to the person who desperately needs to play it?
If we connect this back to the core premise, We have to acknowledge a very hard truth. Bullying does not come from strength. It is an optical illusion of power.
To a rubber suit.
The rubber suit. The aggressor is deeply terrified, highly anxious, and internally, they're the ones who are profoundly unstable. Their entire worldview, their entire sense of self, is incredibly fragile. They attack others to manufacture a feeling of superiority, which is literally the only coping mechanism they have to prevent their own psychological existence from completely crumbling.
So they are essentially using the victim's fear as a mirror to prove to themselves that they exist and that they have impact. They rely on the tears, the confusion, and the apologies as tangible evidence of their own dominance.
Yes.
And without that reaction, they don't know who they are.
What's fascinating here is how violently the tables turn when that supply of evidence is cut off. When the victim reaches that stage of absurdity and naturally stops reacting, the bully's proof of existence instantly evaporates. Imagine screaming into a canyon, relying on the echo to know how big the space is. And suddenly, for the first time in your life, there is no echo. The sound just vanishes into the void. The silence would be terrifying.
It would drive you mad. You would scream louder just to try and force the echo to come back.
Which is exactly what bullies often do right before they give up. They escalate. They experience this bizarre, profound isolation. The person who used to react to them, who used to cry or cower or apologize, now just looks at them like they are standing behind a thick pane of soundproof glass.
Unbothered.
Completely unbothered. The bully is yelling, waving their arms, acting out the exact same routines that used to generate power and compliance, but the target is just watching them, unaffected.
Like watching a fish in a tank.
Exactly. In that moment, the meaning of the bully's actions dissolves into mist. The attack loses its target, and the aggressive energy bounces right back onto the aggressor, leaving them completely alone with their own toxicity.
Let's explore the root of that aggression for a second, because I think it's important. Why is the bully trapped in this cycle to begin with? The research notes that we have to look backwards into their history, right?
We do. These individuals who rely on manufacturing dominance were likely not accepted in their own formative years.
They never received that safe haven.
Right. They never got the, "you feel that way, huh?" treatment when they were scared or overwhelmed as kids. They were likely denied the fundamental right to show weakness or vulnerability.
Which is devastating for a child.
It is. When a child is not allowed to be weak, when their tears are punished, mocked, or ignored by caregivers, they don't magically stop feeling weak.
No, they just learn to hide it.
They learn that expressing weakness is lethal to their survival in that family system. So to survive, they subconsciously amputate that part of themselves. They lock it away. But it doesn't disappear, it festers, and eventually they project those hidden, despised weaknesses onto others.
So they go hunting for it.
They scan the world, they find someone who displays the sensitivity or vulnerability they were brutally punished for, and they attack it relentlessly. By attacking the weakness in someone else, they create a psychological buffer. They feel safely distanced from their own vulnerability.
The internal logic is,
Yeah.
I am destroying the weak thing, therefore I cannot possibly be the weak thing.
Exactly.
So the terrifying monster is actually a deeply wounded, isolated, terrified child trapped in an adult's body, lashing out purely for survival.
That's exactly what it is.
And this brings us to what I found to be the most challenging, yet ultimately the most liberating, concept in this entire framework. It is the ultimate paradox of how the target completely frees themselves from the trauma.
This is the crucial turning point.
The concept is that if the target can observe the bully and realize that the attack isn't actually about the target at all, that it is entirely a manifestation of the bully's own agony and terror, the target's fear fades completely.
It is the final piece of the puzzle. It is the ultimate stabilization of the mental axis.
But I have to ask the hard question here, because I know people listening who have survived abuse or toxic workplaces are, throwing their hands up right now.
Sure they are. It's a huge ask.
Right. Are we asking a victim to suddenly become the therapist for their abuser? Because that feels incredibly heavy and, frankly, deeply unfair for someone who is just trying to survive and heal their own wounds. Why is the burden on the victim to understand the inner child of the person who made their life miserable?
That is the crucial question, and it is vital that we parse this carefully. The answer is a definitive no.
Okay, good.
You are absolutely not becoming their therapist. You are not responsible for healing them. And more importantly, this is not about forgiving the bully in the traditional sense.
So we aren't letting them off the hook.
Not at all. Forgiveness often implies absolving someone of the wrong they committed, or welcoming them back into your life, and we are not asking anyone to do that. This is strictly about understanding the mechanics of what is happening in front of you.
Okay, so distinguish understanding from forgiving in a practical sense. How does that work?
Think of it like understanding gravity. You don't have to forgive gravity when you trip on the sidewalk and scrape your knee.
Right, you're still mad your knee is scraped.
You don't have to befriend gravity, but understanding how gravity works stops you from thinking the Earth hates you personally and targeted you for a fall.
Oh, that's so good.
When the target understands that the bully is just a wounded animal lashing out, when they see the terrified child behind the aggressive facade, the attack loses its personal sting. It shifts the internal narrative.
So it stops being about me.
Exactly. It is no longer I am being attacked because I am fundamentally flawed, annoying, or worthy of abuse. It becomes I am being attacked because this person is drowning in their own insecurity and blindly thrashing around to stay afloat.
And if they hit me while they're thrashing, it's just because I was nearby, not because I deserved it.
Yes. When you realize the attack is not a referendum on your worth, the fear dissipates. The understanding isn't a gift you give to the bully to make them feel better. It is a tool you wield to make your own heart exponentially freer.
It is a tool for your own liberation. That shifts the entire paradigm. It stops being about managing their emotions and becomes entirely about protecting your own peace.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of human psychology, we arrive at a profound truth. Both the target who initially shrinks in fear because their axis is wobbling, and the bully who violently lashes out because they are terrified of their own weakness, they are ultimately driven by the exact same fundamental human need.
Which is why.
They both possess an overwhelming desire to connect. They both desperately want to be seen, to be validated, and to not feel so alone in the world.
It is the ultimate tragic irony. They're both starving for the exact same thing, but their coping mechanisms for trying to get it put them at absolute war with each other.
Recognizing this shared human flaw, this universal vulnerability, untangles the stiffest, most toxic human relations.
Just seeing the humanity in it.
When the person who is targeted finally stands firm on their mental axis, they can look at the aggressor and realize we are both just flawed humans dealing with our pain in completely different ways. By shifting your internal posture from, I need to change this person or build a fortress to defend against them, to, I will just observe them without letting them shake my axis, monumental shifts occur in the dynamic.
You just step out of the ring.
You strip the bully of their power simply by refusing to participate in their delusion of strength.
So what does this all mean as we wrap up today's deep dive? We have journeyed through some incredibly dense, transformative psychological terrain. We started by completely reframing the target, understanding that their wobbling mind is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of high perception and a delicate, unanchored empathy.
It's a completely different way to look at sensitivity.
It really is. And then we learned about the transformative, almost magical power of a simple I hear you, or you feel that way, huh? And how that pure acceptance allows sadness to harden into healthy, protective anger.
The birth of the axis.
Right. And we saw how that anger, when validated, blossoms into a detached sense of absurdity.
And then we completely flipped the script on the bully. We pulled back the curtain to reveal a terrified, isolated individual who is desperately manufacturing dominance to avoid facing their own hidden vulnerabilities. They are craving the exact same acceptance that they so violently deny to others.
We saw the zipper on the monster suit.
We really did. And the practical takeaway for you listening, the real so what of all this research, is to remember that building this mental axis, this unshakable core of self-will, is not an overnight task.
It takes time.
It does. You do not just wake up one day, read a book, and decide to be immune to the world's toxicity. It is built brick by brick. It is forged through tiny, repeated moments of being truly heard and accepted by safe people without judgment, and eventually extending that same non-judgmental observation to yourself.
You have to accept your own feelings, too.
Exactly. It is a slow process of allowing your emotions to mature naturally, rather than forcing yourself to just be tough.
It really is a journey of increments. And as we leave you today, I want to address you directly with one final thought to mull over, building on everything we have just discussed.
Yeah.
Think about the most difficult, aggressive, or frustrating person in your life right now.
We all have one.
We definitely do. Maybe it is a boss who constantly belittles your ideas, a family member who turns every gathering into a battlefield, or someone in your social circle who just drains the life out of you. You have probably spent hours, maybe years, trying to figure out how to outsmart them, how to fix them, or how to build a fortress to defend yourself against their attacks.
It's exhausting just thinking about
It
it.
is. You have been treating them like a brilliant, powerful monster. But what would happen tomorrow if you stopped trying to change them? What if you walked into the room and simply looked at them through that pane of soundproof glass?
What a shift that would be.
What if you realized, in that exact moment they raise their voice, that all their bluster and aggression is just the frantic thrashing of someone who is absolutely terrified of being unseen and unaccepted? How much power would they lose over you in that very second when you finally notice the zipper on the costume?